Hey, Hossein, how's it going, man? How's it going today? How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited that we get to connect today and chat a little bit about Shopify Plus and development, kind of some of the cool things you guys are doing at your agency.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So just to, introduce you, we have Hossein Maleki, who is one of the founders of Satel Creative up in British Columbia. And Hossein, you want to give us a little background on you and your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been around for a while. I started the company when I was a bit younger in 2001. But at that time, I started the company doing some web development on my own, then accounting software, then retail software. And in 2008, 2009, I took on a couple of e-commerce projects. At the time, platforms were really clunky and hard to deal with. So got out of the e-commerce business, started working in the ERP business, and then came around to Shopify in 2012 because our clients wanted to connect to a whole bunch of e-commerce stores for the brands that they distributed. So at that time, I came across Shopify, great platform. Decided to really invest around it, and best decision I made because with them we grew, and over the years, because of that background experience, we got recognized for being a company that has expertise in very complicated, complex implementations. So for that, we were part of the initial group of companies to be brought into Shopify Plus partner program. And since then, we've been doing a lot of e-commerce development and all sorts of development around digital products around e-commerce as well.
That's awesome. Super cool. And give us a little background, like even further than that, like how did you get started, like in development, period, and with the business?
Oh, great question. When I come from Iran, we immigrated to Canada in 2001. So I knew for the last 2 years of high school that I'm not going to be going to university in Iran. I was lucky enough that my parents had the ability to immigrate to Canada, and we had that plan. So I had extra time, and I decided because I really had taken interest in development and computers, so I decided to take a couple of Microsoft courses on my own, do a couple of certifications. At that time, I thought I'm really cool that I was learning those, although it was very beginner, but still, it really got me into it. And when I came here and we had an immigration condition to start a business within 2 years, because my dad's age was over the age of 55 and we couldn't come as a skilled worker class. And then things got messy in Iran. They had to go back to Iran. I started the business. And at that point, I decided that I'm passionate enough about computer science, and I was taking computer science courses in college and university here, that I was like, okay, this is what I got to do. So that's when I started really learning. So I would promise clients that I'm going to deliver on something I had never heard of, read a book, research on it, and just learn it and do it and deliver it.
That's how we all get started, right?
Yes, yes,
Man,
absolutely.
you've been in the game since the with the full internet revolution, right? 2002. Man,
Not only that, because I lived in Iran, I feel like I saw a big technology shift because Iran is so many years behind, or at least at that time it was. So I always feel like I got lucky enough to see a big perspective of shift in technology.
that's awesome. So cool. And so tell us a little bit about like what type of projects you guys are working right now and what you guys specialize in at the agency.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a couple of areas that we really, I think, my team really shines with their expertise, which is you have the scalable, secure implementations where you have brands that when they launch something, it goes 8, 10,000 checkouts a minute, and it needs to really scale. People are always trying to get away with free stuff and things like that, and the privacy compliance around that and all those kinds of things. And then on the other hand, we have a lot of B2B clients where we sort of do things that other people consider boring, but for us is very interesting in terms of their whole architecture of systems that they plan, the ideal state they plan for the future, and the roadmap of few years to really make those big changes of ERP implementation, and so on and so forth. So we have these kind of areas that we do well in. We like to always do cool development where we help our clients grow and then we grow with them. I know that's cliche, but that's essentially what has worked well for us, is to work with our clients in that long term kind of way.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool. I'm just curious because I know you guys are doing very intricate projects. It's not like just building a front end site with the marketplace with like 10, 15, 20 products. I'm sure you guys are doing some pretty deep integrations into the business requirements that some of these larger brands have. They're potentially omnichannel as well. Like another thing that I wanted to mention too, and that I'm just curious to ask about, I know a big thing with scaling brands that are like hitting the 8, 9 figure level is like actually being able to have a proper ERP integration with Shopify. Like, is that something that you guys work on as well, that you guys specialize in?
Yeah, absolutely. And the value that a good ERP implementation will bring a brand is again separation of concerns. Because like as you're doing everything in Shopify, and you are like, and actually that's like a you're a victim of your own success. Like you've grown enough that it's like really hard to manage everything. Do your costing, do your inventory management. All those sorts of things, it becomes very difficult. So then if you have the separation of concern where you have an ERP system that satisfies your finance department, satisfies like your inventory needs, communicates with your warehouse better, all those sorts of things. Now all of a sudden you have your e-commerce layer, which I'm a huge advocate of Shopify Plus, obviously. But if your Shopify Plus is like run for your e-commerce, it does it really really well, and your marketing team can just focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as you get into, having like multiple hubs for distribution, customer support teams, inventory, thousands of SKUs, everything becomes more complicated as the business gets bigger. What would you say is a good I think this is a question I hear a lot when it comes to scaling brands that are like hitting the 7, 8 figure mark, high 7, 8 figure mark. Like when's a good time for them to actually invest into an ERP? Would you say there's a revenue milestone that they say? Is it a SKU milestone? Is it like a business complexity that you see that it's like you're a big brand now, it's going to cost this much to do this integration. You need to do it. It's going to save you a little time and money and energy, and this is something that's really going to be necessary for any potential acquisition in the future too, to make sure you have the right infrastructure in order.
That's a very very good point that people don't plan ahead usually for. But one of the good indicators in today's software world, we all know that we should not use one system for everything. Right? You go for a system for your reviews. Your email provider is different. Your uh, e-commerce is different. You have multiple channels. You have like all these different systems. And that's the right way to go because each of them do that really well. Now, when you realize that you are being successful, but the amount of data that you have is too dispersed among these systems, and it's getting convoluted to manage and run your business, and it's becoming important now to know your profitability, real profitability, and it's becoming important for you to be able to satisfy some to your point, organization for possibly selling, for running a good loan with a bank to grow your business, all those sorts of things. I always calling it like, now we're really growing up to my team whenever we take steps like that in my own business. But I think it's like a step of maturation of a company that it's, really like becomes key and necessary. Now, for brands that are not there yet, or they think they're close to it, or they're there and like they don't have the time to deal with it, my recommendation always is that sit down, plan to work on your business rather than working day to day. Like put that time aside, even if it is a Sunday morning, even if it is an evening, work on it, plan that ideal state you want to get to, which includes your new systems and an ERP system, and what each system keeps as a source of truth. Like design that and then create phases to get there. You don't have to like do that all overnight. It's not a big haul of like migration of everything. That's just like spend 6 months doing it. A successful business will not have time to do that. You got to break it down into phases to slowly get there.
For sure, for sure. It's not something that's just going to happen within a couple weeks. It's going to be a multi-phase approach. And also, as I guess as any e-commerce business matures, the requirements are now changing, right? You might now be international. You might now have multiple hubs that you're sending inventory in and out of, multiple, manufacturing partners, like so many different things going on. Um, I'm just curious, like, let's say I'm running an e-commerce business, fashion brand. Say I've got like 800 SKUs. I'm I'm doing like let's say I'm doing like 8, 9 million a year, 10 million a year. I'm looking to grow to 14, 15 next year. Um, how much does an ERP integration cost for a business like that? And how much time should I, as a like, if I was a business owner in that state, how much time should I expect it to really take for a full integration to take off?
Uh, that's a tough question, but I think like the way that I would go about it is, going going at it from the pace of your own team's understanding of it, and knowing like what they need to look at. So one key thing is like just implementing an ERP system is not like a solution for everything. So I think like really planning around it is really key. I think if you do plan around it, it becomes really easy to decide what kind of ERP you need for your next year and the next 3 years. Because you could go with like an expensive one that like costs you like 30 grand a year, or something like that. And then the implementation, like it really depends on how well you've kept your information and how organized things are. But again, like it can cost another like 30, 40, 50 thousand dollars. But the key thing is that like to do it at the right time in the right way for your team. And I think that, find an ERP that it's a match for what your needs are in the next 3 years, not just today. Because you can go with something that is like cost effective, but then again, like you'll be in the same problem in 2 years.
You're going to outgrow it. It's kind of like being in an office and knowing, being in an office that's going to fit 10 people. You've got three right now, but you're going to have 40 in another year, and you signed a 5-year lease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they say, be aggressive, but be realistic as well. Like, plan like for a lot of growth, but then again, at the same time, just know that you're going to grow anyway. So you have to plan for it.
Very cool. I'm curious, have you guys worked on any projects with brands that potentially are taking like a full omnichannel approach in house and leveraging the Shopify POS system at the moment?
So Shopify POS, not that much. Shopify POS is a really great fit for startup style, mom and pop shop kind of style, selling it like kind of pop up shops, things, setups. But the thing is, omni-channel, absolutely, like retail, multi-location retail. We even have a client that we built them an in-store kiosk that they had in UK, and they wanted to implement the same thing in Canada. And sort of we implemented their e-commerce on Shopify, but then their kiosk is headless, connecting to their Shopify, and they have like a POS as well that is integrated.
No way. Headless kiosk. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Very cool technology. Lots of challenges with hardware, but like it was worth it. Cool project.
That brings up another question for me. Are you guys like solely focused on headless like front end right now? How do you guys really work on the front end for brands that are looking for a new design?
I have very strong feelings about headless, because I think that there are the right times to use it, and wrong times. Because I think there's a lot of push for, in our industry, this, like when we have buzzwords, there's a lot of push for it. And to me, it's like there are cases where actually going headless, it really ties the hands of the marketing people for the brand to run with it. One of the things about Shopify, especially Shopify 2.0, is that every page can be customized. People can create landing pages as they want. All the features that comes with Shopify, new features, it would just be available, like to those teams. So I'm like, if you don't need it, don't do it. There are special cases where headless is going to be very key. For example, we have like iOS and Android Unity app, which is like an AR app, and it's like it's headless on top of Shopify, because like the customer is like a Shopify customer and like all that, or like a kiosk, or some special cases where like e-commerce is like a small part of like the whole setup, and performance is extremely important. Then you can go with that. But again, most of the time, I think that themes are more than a fit for like businesses, because again, with headless, you should not plan for a lot of like updating of features, because it's very difficult to do.
I think it works really well too if it's like smaller SKU sites, just overall, something where it's not too many, there's not too many, options. It's like point, click, buy, out, you know? Yeah,
Absolutely. And not a lot of plans to grow that number of SKUs and more features and things like that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Brings me to my next question. Like, what do you guys do to really optimize like overall front end page speed right now with all the apps that are in the app ecosystem with brands?
That's a
I know it's a big thing, even when you spend some time to like source through code to make sure that things are working well. Like it just seems like that is one limitation of Shopify overall, where your page score is never as great as you would want it to, or your load score is never as great as what you'd like it to see, right?
Yeah, as a as an agency that now has like an app for the App Store as well, I would say that like be very conservative on how many apps you install and what apps you choose to use versus like you might be able to get by without it or like spend a little bit of money on building it within your theme. The reason for that is that to your point, when an app company makes an app, they can't customize it so they don't load a lot of stuff on every page that you do that you have. And the other thing that is pretty important about apps is that there are apps that are very backend heavy, or they're designed within the Shopify 2.0 system where actually you just like add the widget within your theme, and Shopify actually ranks those if it affects your performance negatively. Those are like much safer apps rather than apps that you install that they're supposed to just make changes to your theme, show up on the front end, and sort of like they just inject a lot of code into your store, because now all of a sudden if you install 15 of those, who's going to know which one is really slowing down your site? And performance has been really important.
Totally. You don't know until you pull it out and start from scratch, or yeah, I agree. Well, with that being said, let's hear a little bit more about like what apps you guys are designing for the Shopify ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. So our main app that is just released right now is called Together. So Together app is for reducing returns for merchants in a bit of a unique way, because a lot of people are like, well, like that's genius. Like, how do you do that? Well, it has like it has a fit, and who we think this app works with and for is merchants who are local, merchants who their customers really, they have a good brand loyalty and they want to like keep building on that. And the premise of the app is that, as a merchant, I set what products, this qualifies for, and I set a discount percent. And then as a customer, when I'm browsing those products, I get the opportunity to upgrade my product to a final sale. And the value proposition for the customer is that, as a customer, I'm helping the merchant that I really like and I care about, because we know we all shop from giant marketplaces and we all feel guilty about it. But at the same time, there are brands that we actually have an emotional connection to. We like their story and we want to support them, either it being a local store or a small shop. And then the second value proposition is that you are helping the environment. There is 500 billion tons of waste from e-commerce returns every year that we produce as human beings. And then number three, here's a discount code for X% that the merchant has set for your next order. So essentially that app is like designed to kind of bring, kind of like it came from the pandemic, because like we as customers, we showed that we really care about our local businesses. And I think like, we can hopefully provide a little tool for like merchants to do better with their customers and really increase that brand loyalty. And, sort of it's a win-win-win situation, including for the planet.
That's awesome. So cool. So could you give me an example of like what would be a really good use case? Would you see like a local fashion boutique, or like, is there a specific use case that works really well for this?
Yeah, one of the best use cases is like the trying, thing that people do, especially like with local businesses or like businesses that offer free returns. So a lot of customers, they buy multiple things to try out and return everything except one. And a lot of times this is not a malicious thing. Like I mean, never it's a malicious thing that the customer does that, but it's like something that, hey, it's offered to me, I'm going to use it. But this is one of those things that gets them to think, hey, I know this brand. For example, Doer is one of the brands here in Vancouver that I love, and I buy a lot of things from them. I know my size. I really don't need to think about it. If I'm buying something, I know that I can keep it, so I can actually commit to that. Shoes is a very big one, and we did tests with a couple of like shoe stores that worked well. And local is a huge one. Even people who don't even plan on returning, we're getting that they are upgrading their order. First of all, they get a discount code for the next time, so that builds loyalty, but they also want to just show their support for these local businesses.
Oh, so cool. Do you guys have any other apps in the roadmap that you guys are thinking of?
Yeah, so we have a theme that is coming out. Hopefully, it's in review. We have a theme for the theme store, a 2.0 theme, and then we have two more planned. And yeah, and then we have like a sort of like a, again, a separate AR app for Android and iOS, which was again born in the pandemic.
That's awesome. And what type of clients do you guys usually work with?
So on the kind of like high volume, scalable, secure side of things, anything ranging from say artists and celebrities that we've worked with for cases of like really high volume, really sort of like rapid sales and things like that. Two clients who, to your point, have like a lot of SKUs. They have a lot of complexity around their front end, around navigation, user experience of such. We have a client that they're in the soap making business, and they have so many products, so many ways that you can browse and find products, that it's extremely important. So we don't do graphical design, but we're very proud of our work in terms of user experience. And that's like something that we do. And then on the side of B2B, again, like anything like in terms of integration, ERPs, WMSs, and things of that nature.
Very cool. And where do you see the Shopify ecosystem like going over the next year to 2, 3 years?
So both you and I have been in the Shopify ecosystem for a while. So and I think that I've been sort of thinking that the way that the boom of like last couple of years made people think like things will always go that way. For me, it's never been that. I think that from the time that Shopify started putting like Shopify Plus partner agencies, figuring out a lot of things internally and externally for their partner ecosystem, I think that I've been seeing it like law firms. I think that there's going to be a lot of boutique firms that do a lot of cool things, like small, medium, like us, and then there's going to be like big law firms that like are giants, and it's complicated. I don't want to be in that business, but they are, and they are successful at it. Like I hear like some agencies are now merging up and acquiring, and they're like thousands of people. I don't know if I would want to be in that kind of an agency world. But to me, it's that. And I think that like one of the cool things that is going to still exist in the future in the Shopify world, because I don't see, anybody like overtaking them, at least in the next few years, in terms of like, the Shopify, the e-commerce side of things, is that there's going to be opportunity for every one of those categories. I don't again understand that big agency side. I understand that there's a sort of a value to it, but for me, it's like the boutiques, the small ones, one or two people starting a theme or starting an app, or like again, like I feel like and we're going towards a world of creators. So I think that creator world and the small entrepreneur world is going to like still thrive and do really well, which I'm very excited about. I have a lot of passion about that entrepreneurship spirit that people do have.
Yeah, I think it's really wild just to see like how media is becoming like the new oil. It's like the new currency that everyone's talking about. And the more media you have, the more attention you have, the more attention you have, the more you can do with that to make money. And tying up technology like Shopify and being able to tie it in with people that have leverage, celebrities, influencers, people, that have influence to be able to sell things and build brands, I think is, just the opportunity is endless.
Absolutely. And it's very early in its stages,
Yeah, I mean, look at where things have gone over the last 10 years. Just wait for another 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I remember I was running I started my first e-commerce business back in 2010, and I built it was an e-commerce wine business, so like a wine boutique wine online wine club and a wine shop. And we actually used a custom platform built for uh, wine e-commerce. It was called Vin65, and it was actually a company based out of British Columbia as well, and out of BC. And they built a whole back-end CMS just for wine e-commerce, and then they got acquired by like a larger wine conglomerate. I'm not really sure where they're at, but at the time, wasn't too many options. And I remember, I think it was 2013. I rebuilt the site in Shopify, but and was using Recharge early on. But man, it's wild to see where things have gone, or just where things have gone, and how the boom of social and paid social, and influencers has really been able to take things off. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And funny enough, Shopify is really focusing on wine these days. They really want to get more and more into regulated industry.
Yeah, I know they're trying to get a lot more into their market. Yeah. And I think it's cool too. Now that the platforms opened up more, there's a lot of intricate options and really business requirements that are necessary for like the wine industry, even being a boutique winery. you know Depending on what state you have a license in, you can only sell in certain states require that you can only sell so much wine in a physical year period to one specific customer. So now you need all these permits and licenses for different states, and you need to be able to regulate how much you're actually selling and then collect taxes on those individual sales and then pay them to those individual states. It's just so wild how complicated it is. But at the end of the day, too, I think it's awesome, and I think that's one thing that always shocked me about the wine industry is they get stuck into these custom platforms and they really can't do any marketing because they're in some CMS that doesn't allow them to build in a loyalty program, to build in front end offers, to build in landers, to actually do things. So it'll be interesting what happens, over the next couple of years as compliance opens up more for the wine and the beer industry when it comes to direct sales.
Yeah, you make a really good point because those systems that were just meeting the requirements of the regulations, they don't do anything else. And like there's no marketing really.
Yeah, and you can't. Yeah, the platform's closed off, and if you want to do custom development and it's possible, then you've got to find a dev that actually has worked in that platform and can build something custom for you. And then, of course, 6, 8, 9 months later, that platform makes an update, and then all of a sudden something doesn't work and you've got to give that developer a call back. It's kind of like, what we've seen with, WordPress over the last, 10 years is like you build this beautiful site in WordPress and it runs really great one day. And then the next day, you know, plugins are all out of date. WordPress has an update. Things are crashing and broken. And you're like, "Didn't Paul-"
And none of your customizations works with your upgrades, right? It was the problem of Magento as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's nuts. It's so unstable. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And same with Magento. Yeah. Yeah.
Where I think in the next 10 years, we're not going to have a lot of development done on the, on the merchant side. I think like, back end we're replacing with low code and no code. And we've been seeing that coming for years. Microsoft Azure Logic Apps was one of the first things that, really like amazed me. And now it's like everywhere. And then on the front end, you see these like, 2.0 themes and like where it's going. So to your point, from where you were like really stuck and beholden to development versus where you're going, which is like all about marketing and connecting with your customer and, really like, doing the things that people should be able to do and not beholden to development. That's, I think, like where it's going. So us who do development, we should be focused on developing systems for those people to use in that way. Yeah.
Totally. It's almost like no code. It just means now we're building more no developers are now just building more no code for non-developers, right? Instead of holding people's hands behind their back. Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's what we tell our clients too. Anytime we're doing any front end work, like, hey, I want to be able to give you a site that you don't have to call and make any changes unless you really want to make changes. That's it. Yeah. What do you think about like just talking about front end web and development and web apps in general? Like, what do you think about some of these other no code platforms out there? I know we're going to talk a little bit outside of Shopify, but I'm curious if you've used any of these no code platforms like Bubble that essentially allow you to build anything on the back end of the internet.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Been a fan for many years as a backend developer, which is funny to be a fan because it's like essentially replacing the need for me. But been using it a lot. I mean, and the key thing is like there's no one platform that is going to win this, right? I'm gonna go sideways a little bit, but like same thing with metaverse. Everybody like doesn't know what it is. They think they thought Facebook will win it, but the thing is, it's not one platform. So you have like Zapiers of the world. You have even like for home stuff, the IFTTT, if this then that platform. There was like all those ones, and then now there's like to your point, Bubble. There's like Google has AppSheet. There's like Shopify has Flow. You look at like even like platforms that are up and coming and doing really well, like Gorgeous and Klaviyo. Like they have like automations like built into it. So I think it's like really dispersed among these tools, and it's going to be. But I really recommend for people to fine tune like what they do with these automations, and find like the platforms that fits them best, because you'll see like with a couple of like automations like that, all of a sudden you see how much time your team saves, and how much better it is.
Totally. That efficiency and just being able to make sure you can streamline these workflows and automations, I think are huge from anything. I mean, even it's funny. I've seen some guys that are like just building automations for like, hey, if someone tags, if an influencer tags your product in a story, they'll pull the story, right? So you can then save that asset on your own drive and then use it for marketing purposes later on. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be gone in 24 hours regardless. So
That's a really good automation right there. In terms of pulling data, like there's another example of that. You know, um, like in the past, building a data warehouse was such an enterprise thing, and now anybody essentially can go and use something like Fivetran or a Stitch Data and connect their Shopify store and their Yotpo reviews and their Klaviyo and everything into a Google BigQuery, which costs nothing for like a lot of data. And then now all of a sudden you can interact with that data warehouse that you have in terms of marketing. Because data warehouses of the past, it was like you build an enterprise massive thing, and then like you build some reports and dashboards for some people to look at it, and hopefully it has an effect on like your next year's goals. But today you can have that, to your point, be pulling data that then you can use for your marketing. And in an example, we use, for example, the all of the metrics of our clients' products to then do customized sorting based on profits, based on availability of inventory across sizes and things like that. So I feel like there's so much you can do with data when you now can have access to it.
yeah, yeah, and I think you nailed it. Like it's definitely one thing I think just in from small and medium sized brands in general that struggle with is how to aggregate the data properly and actually make some educated decisions off of it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm so stoked to have this conversation with you. This has been great. What else is going on for you guys? Like where do you guys see you guys yourselves as a company like over the next couple of years?
So I feel like for us to have, we've built really great products for our clients over the last however many years, and we wanted to build our own, which we are doing now, which is very exciting. But also, what's been exciting for us is that we've like during the pandemic we became like a sort of a distributed team, and now we have people across Canada and US. And one of the key things that we have now is we have more resources in terms of marketing, customer experience, like data even, and things of that nature, that now I think that we can even do better with our agency. So I'm very excited about both sides, because I think that we have a lot of exciting things planned for 2023 on the agency side, and our products are finally getting some traction. They're getting out there, we're getting installs, which is very exciting. So that's like essentially what we're looking forward to. And I think the things that we spend time building expertise in, which is like cross-border, 3D, privacy compliance, data warehousing, things like that, I think it's like now it's going to start showing up as like requirements for people who want to do. Because again, we've always been like in the long run, what do we think merchants need?
For sure. No, I hear you on that. And I'm curious you bring up like data and compliance. What are some things that you guys have been working on with some of your clients to just make sure that brands are within compliance when they're going cross borders or into different areas? Now with with GDPR, CCPA, Canadian regulations, like doesn't matter. Hey, you can be a brand you know, based out of Texas or California, wherever it is, but you need to make sure that you're in compliance if you're selling in these other areas. What do you guys do to make sure that clients are in full compliance?
Absolutely. So first thing is to have a data map. you really need to know in today's world, to your point, if you're in Texas and you sell in California and you have California customers, CCPA applies to you, right? And if you have like Europeans visiting your site, that applies to you. And Canadian regulations coming into effect is going to be the strictest of them three. And and it's not that difficult. Once you know it, it's like it can be manageable. So it will be in your benefit to invest in planning for it. The way to plan for it, first off, is to have a data map, which is when a customer hits your website and starts interacting, you really need to know where the data is going. Because again, in today's world, you have multiple systems that take the customer data for you. And with that, then you can plan the rules of requests that you need to comply with. So there's one easy request, which is on the site, which is cookie banner. You need to have your cookies listed, and then the customer can opt out. That's easy. There's apps for it, and then it's a very straightforward thing. Shopify has really good documentation on it. The next step of that is the requests that residents of these regions can do, which is delete my info, request my info. You have to know what's the requirements around these. And for our clients, we help automate it because you have to have 2 points of verification. I can't just go on a site and say, hey, delete Mark's data, and then they should comply. You have to prevent that. So there's 2 points of verification. Then you have to gather the data. You need to give it to them in a way that it's available for them to download in 30 days. Things like that. It's not complicated, but once you know it, you can implement processes for it. What we do is we help automate it for our clients who get a lot of these requests. For example, there's one in California called "Do Not Sell My Information," which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's the way that it's worded is really bad because people are confused on it and they think oh, this company's selling my information. So we get a lot of requests for that. So automating it definitely will be helpful because it takes away a lot of manual work.
Very cool. Is there anything else that you'd recommend that merchants should be looking at, on the horizon, as we go into the next few months when it comes to the back end of Shopify, compliance, anything like that? Is there anything that you are noticing maybe on the trending side for back end that people should be looking at?
Yeah, so I think two things comes to my mind. You pick which one, and I can go. Talk about it. One is cross-border and duties and taxes paid orders, and then the other one is the way that customer relationship with brands are changing, and I think that customer service is now the new way of selling and building on that relationship. So those are the two things that I see that people need to really focus on, in my opinion, for 2023.
For sure. Let's talk about cross border because anyone that's selling cross border knows it's a pain in the ass to take care of it. I mean, if you're selling to Europe and you don't have the infrastructure set up to be able to collect, the VAT ahead of time, someone's not getting their order. If you're in Italy and you order from California, they're not going to get their order until they pay that, and there's going to be some additional fees associated with it. There's always back and forth. Things get held up. It's just a pain. What do you see brands do to really combat that right now?
So my recommendation generally is that start with one extra country that you want to do duties and taxes paid, or just a few. People are like, oh, I'm going to go cross border. Let's do 50 countries. Wait, that's a really hard thing to take on. But find out which countries you really care about and look at your data to understand which one of your customers would benefit the most from having the packaged goods that you're selling them arrive at their home without them having to deal with anything. Then second thing is learn the rules. Shopify now provides duties and taxes calculation, but it would really benefit you to really understand it. And understanding it, it has a learning curve, but it's not that hard. So understanding the rules of DDP, DDU, what are the limits for each country? So for example, off the top of my head, Israel and Australia have a low a maximum. So you go over a certain amount, you can't ship duties and taxes paid anymore. So there's those rules that you can learn, right? And it's not hard to learn. Learn that about the countries you want to start with and gather your HS codes, which is the categorization for your products, country of origin, figure that out. It's not hard to do for your products. Then, in my opinion, the best approach you can have is find a career that you want to work with and deal with them as your partner. Build those relationships because they have people who are experts that have educated us even in implementation with our clients. Because when the customers order from you and get the package at their home without a signature needed, without them having to go to the post office and pay, uh, they would love you for it. And you can charge them accordingly at the time of purchase with Shopify's tools.
That's awesome. Also, when it comes to cross border, how do you recommend brands set things up? Subdomain sites, like one main root domain. What do you guys do and what do you recommend?
So if there's not enough differentiation between the regions, because some people have different warehouses, different rules and things of that nature for their own business, then you might have to set up like different stores. But if not, I think it's worth the cost of going with Shopify Markets, because Shopify Markets is like it makes it really easy to manage, and there might be a time that you can separate the sites, but in my opinion, at this point in time, for most people, that makes sense.
Well, Hossein, thanks so much for everything today. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you guys at Satel?
Yeah, I'll leave my email, which is Hossein, Hossein at satel.ca. So satel.ca. And also, you can contact us from our website, give us a call. We're here in Vancouver, but nowadays we're here in all of Canada and we're in LA as well. But yeah, looking forward to hearing from people and having good chats.
That's awesome. I'll also put that information in the show notes so everyone has it below when this episode goes live. But
Thank you. Thank you. And if any merchants like that listen to your podcast wanted to try together, we can also give them like a 6 month trial as well, and to hear like the feedback from them.
sweet. We'll definitely put a link to the Together app in there as well.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate everything today. This has been great.